Hello. How we doing?
Good.
It's Mrs. Rose, and I just want to say hello. I've really been enjoying the feedback from our stories, and I've heard from adults as well as kids who wanted to hear some more. So I think we're going to try something new. You all know I have a favorite book, and it has to do with a pig named Wilbur. And I actually have our Daisy penguin here to keep me company, and I thought you might feel right at home. We're going to look at Charlotte's Web. Even if it's a favorite that you've read before, a second time, a third time is even better. Charlotte's Web is a classic story and a real favorite of mine, and it's written by E.B. White. It might bring back memories of you reading or hearing the story before. We're going to read one chapter each day, and today we will start with chapter 1, Before Breakfast. "Where's Papa going with that axe?" said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. "Out to the hog house," replied Mrs. Arable. "Some pigs were born last night." "I don't see why he needs an axe," continued Fern, who was only 8. "Well," said her mother, "one of the pigs is a runt. It's very small and weak, and it will never amount to anything. So your father has decided to do away with it." "Do away with it!" shrieked Fern. "You mean kill it, just because it's smaller than the others?" Mrs. Arable put a pitcher of cream on the table. "Don't yell, Fern," she said. "Your father is right. The pig will probably die anyway." Fern pushed a chair out of the way and ran outdoors. The grass was wet and the earth smelled of springtime. Fern's sneakers were sopping wet by the time she caught up with her father. Look at Fern right here. Does it look like she's trying to do something? What? Yeah. "Please don't kill it," she sobbed. "It's unfair." Mr. Arable stopped walking. "Fern," he said gently, "you will need to learn to control yourself." That doesn't really sound gently. That sounds kind of firmly. "Control myself," yelled Fern. "This is a matter of life and death, and you talk about controlling myself?" Tears ran down her cheeks, and she took a hold of the axe and tried to pull it out of her father's hand. "Fern," said Mr. Arable, "I know more about raising a litter of pigs than you do. A weakling makes trouble. Now run along." "But it's unfair," cried Fern. "The pig couldn't help being born small, could it? If I had been small at birth, would you have killed me?" Mr. Arable smiled. "Certainly not," he said, looking down at his daughter with love. "But this is different. A little girl is one thing. A little runty pig is another." "I see no difference," said Fern, still hanging on to the axe. "This is the most terrible case of injustice I have ever heard of." A strange look came across John Arable's face. He seemed almost ready to cry himself. "All right," he said, "you go back to the house, and I'll bring the runt in when I come. I'll let you start it on a bottle like a baby. Then you'll see what trouble a pig can be." When Mr. Arable returned to the house half an hour later, he carried a carton under his arm. Fern was upstairs changing her sneakers. The kitchen table was set for breakfast, and the room smelled of coffee, bacon, damp plaster, and wood smoke from the stove. "Put it on the chair," said Mrs. Arable. Mr. Arable set the carton down at Fern's place. Then he walked to the sink and washed his hands and dried them on the towel. Fern slowly came downstairs. Her eyes were red from crying. As she approached her chair, the carton wobbled, and there was a scratching noise. Fern looked at her father, then she lifted the lid off the crate. There inside, looking up at her, was a newborn pig. It was a white one. The morning light shone through its ears, turning them to pink. "He's yours," said Mr. Arable, "saved from an untimely death, and may the good Lord forgive me for this foolishness." Fern couldn't take her eyes off the tiny pig. "Oh," she whispered, "oh, look at him. He's absolutely perfect." She closed the carton carefully. First she kissed her father, then she kissed her mother. Then she opened the lid again, lifted the pig out, and held it up to her cheek. At this very moment, her brother Avery came into the room. Avery was 10. And I think we're going to stop right there for now. Avery is Fern's big brother, and I think he's going to add an interesting twist to the story. When we come back, we'll pick up with where we left off with Avery coming into the kitchen. Fern has got baby Wilbur, and we'll stop right there for now. So I hope to see you next time as we pick up with Charlotte's Web. Thank you.